let's do the boring stuff first. Once we do the boring stuff first, we are good to now go and leapfrog to the interesting stuff.
I want to create solutions which help people.
Be this person I want to be in the future, I have to follow this path.
Seeing their lifestyle, the type of lifestyle that I want.
Africa's blank canvas. Paint your dreams.
Welcome to today's episode. Today I am joined by a very special guest. Some of you might know him. His name is Tinotenda Joe, creator of BriteAPI and the Disease API. How are you doing, Tino?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
It's always wonderful to have many people to share their stories. Yeah. So Tino, I see you've recently done a couple of things. Yeah, not done. You're currently doing some couple of things. But before we get into that meat and, get to know you a bit more, getting into tech, how was that journey like for you?
Okay, fine. So first and foremost, my journey into tech has been quite a long one, though there are some people who have got quick journey. To begin with, I started to jump into tech. I think that was 2017. That's when I go in full force. Back then, I had a background of medical health where I was doing sciences in advanced level high school. Then I moved on to University of Zimbabwe, where I enrolled into the School of Pharmacy. When I was in the School of Pharmacy, I noticed that I had that deep interest of working with digital things like technologies. For example, I so wanted to make a very, very simple database back then, which really drives to the point of what we are doing right now with BriteLink. Then I realized the curriculum for pharmacy students at the University of Zimbabwe does not really give you the freedom to have hands-on classes on things like programming, things like computer sciences. So I dwelled back then, 2017, that's when I started to be like, okay, fine. Where else can I get information to learn these things? Or what is the scope? What exactly can I get out of these things? So that's when I started to enroll on some online classes, Udemy, Coursera, and this one that I recently used was Cypher for blockchain. But those were just me, just like going all over the places, trying to figure out where my spark was being lit. So once I found it, I just started like, so how can I merge technology and healthcare? So the journey began when I was in my third year, when I kind of like have the sense of the field that I spend much of the time in, which is the pharmaceutical field. Then I started to go out there, seek certifications, seek education on the specifics of how to get this skill and complement it with pharmaceutical knowledge. So I then graduated with a bachelor's degree in pharmacy at the University of Zimbabwe last year. That's when I decided to now go full force into health tech. So I am a pharmacist, but I think myself as more of a person who's getting into tech full time. Though most of the work that I do with my colleagues kind of resonate to medical background, the pharmaceutical background, because that is the background that we grew up in terms of professionalism.
Thank you for sharing. That is very amazing, especially when you hear about your background, that you're not exactly based in tech, but you were based in pharmaceuticals. Then you decided to, advance. You see that it's so funny that you started from something that's just maybe making a database that led you to start doing the things that you're currently doing.
So actually, this was, back then when you are just starting out or at university, you are so full of energy. The world hasn't shown you how cruel it is. You think everything is possible like that. So I was overlooking some of the key concepts. If you want to build a software, for example, let's say you want to build something as simple as an electronic health record, you need some certain point of data where you're going to store that data. Then you need some certain way of distributing those information. So those are the things that kind of like interest me, like how can someone get to make a software, then distribute it and it start getting used in a serious environment like a hospital or so. But once you jump in a rabbit hole, you started to see the other side of the things, like, wow, I have to know this, I have to know this, I have to know this. But it's sort of something that sparked my interest into tech, and then by default, being in the pharmaceutical industry, you then kind of try to find the point where these two intersect, so that you don't really get to go something like away from the realm of your operations, so that you make something that is relevant and something that you kind of understand.
Yes, I believe that. I always encourage people to get into programming and tech skills, because I just feel like these days it's just now like a layer which can help you to do the things you want to do. You're tired of something, or you want to something that you really think can help people does not exist. With having some programming skills and a bit of problem solving skills, you can go out there and build something of your own that solves the problem that you're facing. And talking about solving problems, you recently released the disease API, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 10,000 diseases in it, stored in its database that can help people. What was the thought process of how you got to making that winter API? When did that brainchild like develop, like, okay, this is something we might need?
So the story behind the Breitling is quite fascinating, and for me, it still shocks me that I actually ended up, or I actually found my way in the path that he had me building an API or APIs or a database per se. But the original thought came from when I was in my final year at University of Zimbabwe. That's starting 2022, end of 2022. So I had an idea that was complementing, or that was proving to be a viable solution for the pharmaceutical supply chain. We have problems with counterfeits or fake medicines, right? Then having fake medicines in circulation, the Medical Control Authority of Zimbabwe and other stakeholders are trying to fight those people who inject fake medicines, fake drugs in the circulation, in the supply chain. So there's this thing that is called the blockchain technology, which is sort of like a distributed ledger. What it does, it simply helps you to do that, track and trace, verify the origin of a drug, the point at which through the supply chain the drug is currently in custody of. Let's say, for example, it's still at the distributor, it just left the supplier or the manufacturer, or it's already at the end user, which is the patient. So I embarked on creating that software, which I still have stored somewhere very safe in the hard drive until the environment allows. So that software now was very good to be deployed in production or to be used by the ministry. But the problem that we have was, it's still the problem that is existing right now. The supply chain required the system to operate on a database that has got records of drugs, records of suppliers, records of retailers. So you find out in Zimbabwe, those data sets or those databases are not really present or publicly available for use, which is something that then had me try to go through a war. Like, I tried to search, I tried to reach out through those organizations like the Medicine Control Authority, but you find out only the data sets that they have were the data sets of consumption, not the data sets of the whole system as a whole, like who is responsible for supplying this drug, who is responsible for manufacturing this drug, or what quantities of this drug that are needed in a hospital, let's say, for example, Parenya to a hospital. So it's something that then stops me to keep on furthering developing that supply chain solution, because we did not have the data, the information we needed to use at hand. Then I paused right there, and I went on to try to build an electronic health record with a friend who is currently outside of the country. We faced another problem that required us to have a solution of an existing database, an existing software that just has got some information stored for this other softwares, like the secondary softwares, to then tap in and like, we want to just see the records of drugs that are used in Zimbabwe. We want the records of diseases that are frequently encountered in Zimbabwe. We do not have those information pulled for usage, especially for software consumption. So it's something that pushes me like, fine. If we do not have this information and we aspire or we dream to build secondary solutions that will help people, but how will then these secondary solutions actually be of benefit to the people or to the industry if we do not have the basic tools that we need? For example, information put together about the total incidence of cholera in Zimbabwe, or the total deaths, for example, of COVID-19 that are actually pruned data that is good to be used to be analyzed by specific software. So that's when I started to sit down and go back to the drawing board and like, okay, fine. How about we try to build infrastructure that other secondary softwares can now depend on. So simply, it's not merely a disease API or a disease database. It covers almost everything that you want, especially if you are building for healthcare, from drugs, from lab tech information, from diseases, as you said, from doctors. Currently, we're working on the pharmacovigilance side that can give you the statistics of how many people in Harare have gotten the vaccine for cholera, how many people have actually reported positive signs for cholera. So those are the things that we do not have, like, are not within immediate access for people who might want to build softwares. I'm not saying the country does not have these records. They are there, but you are going to find out with those records, they are written on paper, books that are stored somewhere in the storeroom. We do not have somewhere that these records are digitized. So in a nutshell, what we are trying to build at BriteLink is like the infrastructure for health tech builders, which then can allow people to aspire to build things like the supply chain that I mentioned, the electronic health records, and other health tech.
I love the way you said that you had to go back to the drawing board at a point because of the other challenges that arose as you were building your initial idea. Because I think a lot of people face that problem where they are building a secondary solution and the primary solution is not there. That's making it hard and difficult to continue with whatever building, because what's going to happen next is someone wants to build a tertiary solution and they don't have the backbone to support that infrastructure. So for you to just go back to the drawing board, like, let's find the root cause and let's attack the root cause first before we build. And I think creating that BriteAPI, I think when I see the responses on social media, people are genuinely impressed and are happy about having something that is so accessible. Because I remember back in the day, I once had to talk with someone from the higher ups from Zera when I was talking about the energy issue in Zimbabwe. I'm like, where can users get data that can help build solutions for it? For example, maybe you want to see energy consumption and you want to build like a winter machine learning model and stuff like that and how it can best help. But like you said, the information, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But when it's there, it's mostly written down on paper and in books. You can't use it when it's like that. It's a whole another process of getting that information off the paper into the computer. It would be way faster if it just was online.
Exactly. And it's something that really hits home, especially in Zimbabwe, where you can actually get to see people who build tech products are so active, on several platforms, and there are people with brilliant ideas. But the problem that we have is people really skip the primary stage of having the baseline infrastructure that will then enable them to build those secondary and tertiary products. I remember back in 2000 and should be 2000, sorry, 2021, when we had that full prevalence for COVID-19 and people were on lockdown, we had like a burst, like a bubble of new products that were emerging out from different hubs, people building solutions. But the problem with those solutions, you can really see them that they were tertiary or secondary solutions. People try to bring on Amazon, but for Zimbabwe, Uber, but for Zimbabwe. So you see that there are some building blocks that enable Amazon to thrive in the European market that are not available in Zimbabwe or specifically in the African continent. So we aspire those secondary techs. For example, right now there's a bubble about AI products for artificial intelligence. But the basic thing that we can try to think of when it comes to AI is AI thrives on information, on data. But there's no way AI is going to walk into like you mentioned, like an energy company and start to go through their books, downloading information onto the cloud. It won't do that. And there's no way we are going to build like an AI that is custom for the Zimbabwean environment that knows almost everything about Zim if we do not have the information about Zimbabwe on the internet first. So that is something that keeps on ringing back and bringing me back to like, we really need to build infrastructure. We really need to pause and ignore those bubble, like those secondary solutions that are all amazing and like, fine, let's do the boring stuff first. Once we do the boring stuff first, we are good to now go and leapfrog to the interesting stuff.
Let's do the boring stuff first. I think that's one of my favorite saying you've said today, is that because it reminds me of another developer I once talked to who was making the boring stack. He said sometimes, you know, when you have something which might seem boring, but it is initial for you to be able to build upon. So like you said, let's do the boring stuff first. Yes. I remember you talked a bit about the blockchain, and some of my viewers and listeners out here will be thinking, what is the blockchain? I'll do my explanation of it, then you can jump on it and elaborate more so people can truly understand. For those people who are listening,
it's okay.
I think the best example of a blockchain is something like Amazon. When you order something online, you know how Amazon like constantly tracks it, like, oh, it's at the warehouse. It's being shipped by FedEx. It's now at the FedEx warehouse. Then from FedEx warehouse, oh, it's now in transit. Then when it arrives to your post office near you, it says, oh, it's now in your post office area. Then, oh, it's being picked up by, for example, Swift. Oh, it's now on the road. Then it's finally at the house. That's why I feel like blockchain is like, there's like a constant, at every step, there's a record of that step. It's not that you just ordered something and the next thing you know it's at your house. There's like a record of wherever it went and until you finally get in your hands. So I think in the same way you're talking about the medicine issue, like we need to know who has manufactured it, who has transported it, who has kept it, who has done this until it eventually gets to the consumer. You can take up on that and elaborate more on blockchain and how BriteAPI is coming in and using that blockchain system.
Right, fine, perfect. So exactly like the context you put it, blockchain simply entails like a digital version of the actual supply chain. We have the point of origin up to the final consumer. In very simple terms, you can try to think of, okay, fine, I'm thinking of a very, very silly example, but you can try to think of blockchain. Let's say we are a group of people, then we have somewhere we write maybe notes. So every time someone writes on that book, right? If I write Tinotenda Joe was here, and you have a copy of that book right over there, you are going to see the writings that I put appear on your book, that Tinotenda Joe was here. But on your end, it will indicate that this is Tinotenda who wrote this at this time, at this location. Then if Elon Musk then has got also that copy, then writes Elon Musk was here suing Sam Altman, then you're going to see that it will appear on my notebook, on your notebook too, on another person's notebook. So this notebook is sort of like the blockchain that is immutable, which means if someone writes and I want to try to correct that, this is not Elon Musk, this is not the spelling. Elon Musk made an error on his spelling. Then I then change the spelling. It will actually refuse. If I try to keep on forcing, it will then alert the other people who are holding their other same copies. Like, hey, Joe, Elon Musk is trying to change the spelling of the name. ED is trying to change the spelling for Elon Musk's record. So it's immutable, like uncorruptible, like there's so much proof that will tell you who has done this at what time. Then bringing it back in the context of the medical supply chain. So the blockchain, like I put it, like it's just think of it as a digital ledger. If the supplier manufactures like 300 kgs of paracetamol, then they record that on the blockchain. And me, as the distributor or wholesaler, I'm going to buy those 300 kgs. Then the blockchain will record that the manufacturer acquired 300 kgs from the supplier acquired 300 kgs from the manufacturer at this date, and they made this payment, and they have been given this so much quantity. Then, as the supplier, if I decide to split the 300 into 150 to retailer A, retailer B, in the blockchain or the digital ledger, there's going to be a record that says the supplier now split that consignment into two. The other one is going to retailer A, the other one is going to retailer B. Retailer A paid, retailer B does not. Now, if we go back to the manufacturer, the manufacturer will get to see that that 300 kg is now split into two, and the other half is with the retailer A, who is located in Harare CBD, and the other half is with retailer B, who's located in Gweru. So it's so transparent, and it's open, and it's immutable, as in you cannot change, you cannot lie. Everything that happens in the supply chain is visible to all the players who are involved in that supply chain. So even if the medication, for example, is long gone, is already consumed by a person, let's say, for example, me, the supplier, the original manufacturer of that drug, will know that this specific drug flowed through this wholesaler to this retailer to this patient. And whatever that we try to do, the records, the exchange in terms of money, quantity, are also going to be recorded on that digital ledger, which is the blockchain. So what it does, it just gives you proof of evidence. Like you are saying, really, I sold you 2 pills of paracetamol. Where is the proof? So the blockchain will give you that undeniable proof that is verifiable. Like we can verify what you are saying, and you cannot lie or you cannot try to manipulate. So it's something that in an environment where we can have things like corruption, we can have things like security issues, people trying to sell you counterfeits or fake products, the blockchain can actually come in handy to provide you the real proof, like the evidence of what is true and what is not.
I love how you speak these things with so much passion and understanding. You're able to explain this so clearly and the vision of it. And I think people can understand that he's just trying to reduce this amount of fake things which are happening in the system, because every time there's a fake drug, there's a high chance of someone dying from these fake drugs. And having this thing that undeniable, that as a consumer, when you're buying your paracetamol or whatever you're buying, you're able to be like, oh, you're able to like scan and see like, oh, this is how this actually exists on the blockchain. This is something that is legal. This is something that has been brought in by the right people, that you can always buy things with confidence.
And as the consumer, you can like verify, because medication is death or life. So you really have that right to verify if something that you are consuming, you are putting into your body, is authentic. So you can literally get to verify who manufactured it, when and where were the other raw materials imported from. So it really is something that is just holistic in terms of transparency, the blockchain.
That's just very amazing. I like the way, just like I said before, I just like the way you explained it and you got into it. And like you said, it's very important as a consumer. It is your right for you to be able to verify the medication you're putting into your system. That is, like you said, life and death. And I heard in your conversation, in our conversation, you've been saying we, that I think that suggests that you have a team of people you're working with. Can you just tell us how the team was assembled and how each person is playing a role to build, to bring this vision into reality?
Oh, yeah, fine. So, like I said, that BriteLink really, we are not trying to put money or profits in front of growth and value we are trying to bring to the industry. So the goal really is to provide infrastructure to builders, developers, and even ready to use products to end customers. Right now, we are currently operating as a software, like a software company that is providing software as a service, a SaaS. But in the long-term goal, I think soon enough in June, we'll be having our first infrastructure that will allow health practitioners to handle things like telemedicine, having communication at ease with people in remote areas that are inaccessible, video calls, having consultation with your doctors. So it's something that if you sit down right now and try to build a software, you're going to face challenges. It will become difficult for you to access the infrastructure. But the BriteLink now tries to simplify those hurdles and just give you the infrastructure with just like 5 lines of code of implementation. Then you already have an application that is allowing doctors to have video calls, to send patient data, track and trace, and stuff like that. So we are currently a very, very small team of 3 developers, including me, myself. So we haven't yet decided to establish BriteLink into a structured, what can I say, structured company. We are just trying to operate as a project per se, which allows us to critically think and experiment. Because sometimes when you establish yourself as like we have now, who is the CEO, who is the CTO, like all those other branches, it becomes quite difficult for you to, yes, yeah. So like we want to make a good image out there. So we haven't yet established the who is responsible for what, who's responsible for what. All of us are developers, 3 of us, and are still gender unbalanced. We are boys for now. 2 guys, the one is in South Africa, and the other one is my classmate, whom I was in the same class at the University of Zimbabwe.
Like you said, I think that's very important. I think one of the things we can pick out is like, don't be quickly to establish roles like CEO, CFO, because it becomes a distraction in itself than focusing on what it is. Like, first, let's build what we're building, and then we will cross that bridge when you get there. I think the best example is when you look at the story of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. The first thing they really did push was just establishing Facebook as a whole, like what is Facebook and stuff. When they finally got to a certain level where a business structure was now really needed for it to be, taken seriously, that's when you're now like, okay, guys, this is how we want to build this and how we, each of us will play a role. As much as it's always good to focus on the product at first and make sure it's the best it can be.
When you keep on going and you keep on building, like the structure itself will just come into play and you realize, this guy is good at this and this guy is good at this, and you quickly go. Sometimes I like as the person who bring up the original idea for BriteLink, I can quickly say, I want to be the CEO. Like, guys, this is something that I thought of myself and I deserve all the accolades. But you find out that you may not be skilled enough or be the right person to take on that position, which is something that say like, let's just focus on building for now. Build.
Those are some wise words coming from you, Tino, especially like you said that, because people usually tend to say, oh, it was my idea, so I'm going to be the leader. Sometimes you do not have those leadership qualities that will take that idea to enter a new level. Sometimes you have to be humble, just like, yes, it's my idea, but I don't think I can steer this idea to the right place it can be. If you take the lead, it might not grow as big as it can possibly be, unless someone else took the
Exactly.
role. That is very wise. And I
Exactly.
recently saw that you became a senior developer at the Harare Institute of Public Health. How is that new thing being in your life now, also working a job and you're also building your own thing? How has that been like?
Yeah, so really it's quite challenging, and it's my very first time having a full-time employment, like on-site employment. Then you are trying to build something again on the side. Uh, Going back to my introduction, when I said I started out this tech thing back in 2017. So when I started tech in 2017, 2018, then 2019, I got an opportunity to work for the nonprofit organization called the Pharmacist Association of Zimbabwe, CPA, that represents all the pharmacists in Zimbabwe. So at CPA, my job was basically a web developer, where I was developing a website for them to allow pharmacists to literally go and subscribe for their membership online, write articles and publish on their blog, upload things, resources for pharmacists. So it's something that, again, kept me in the pharmaceutical industry, looped in what's going on, the challenges, the problems right in there. So I was more like the tech guy, but with the pharmacy background. So I had what one might say a perfect fit for the position. So doing so, Harare Institute of Public Health is literally in sync with the CPA, and it so happened that they also wanted a developer who has got that background in healthcare, who can literally then work on some other interesting projects that are health inclined. You know how difficult it is to explain to someone without the medical background, like, hey, I want the software to be able to process drug by drug dosages. Then once you say drug dosages, someone who is just a tech developer, who is just like tech, a more inclined in tech and without that background in healthcare, will have confusion and will take a lot of time to process the idea and bring it into production. So it's something that I found myself like, this is really interesting. I can really get to work on the health side, and I can get to work on the technical side, and I can join the two without friction. So at HIPH, literally among one of the lead developers for their systems. They are building quite amazing tools, and they are the ones who are actually our biggest consumer of the BriteAPI database. They are literally using our database to build their other softwares. So the question was, how have I been finding it to be employed at another job? Then you're also another product that you're building. I don't want to lie, it's really something that is very, very hard. You'll find that you have to prioritize your core purpose or the team purpose, the company purpose, which is something that boils down to whether or not if I just want money or I really am into the vision of what I'm doing. So I try really to dedicate my weekends, for example, to just do the bridling stuff, then my weekdays to do the technical on site at work stuff. And then the challenge really now starts appearing through weekdays when you are like, so I have like 5 days that I'm trading, ignoring my startup, and I'm putting work on this other thing just because it's employment. I need money. That's guaranteed money. The startup is not guaranteeing me. So it's really hard. And I'm still new to this whole setup of things, because back then I was able to work from home, doing all my things at home. But now it's on site. You are really required to be present. And you also one of the prominent people that they'll be expecting your input. That is undivided effort you are going to put into building whatever that you are doing at work. So it drains energy, a lot of it. But when you really, I think when you really have that drive within you, or you try to really culture to sustain that fire, or then the other team members, like we talked about, that are still building on the side, that are waiting for you, they can just say, we had a breakthrough, we solved this. So it's something that then interests you, and be like, okay, once I get home, I'm going to pull an all-nighter, then I'm going to catch up with the guys, or I'm going to put in my input. Then you go on. So for now, really, the passion is something that has been driving me to try to strike balance without quickly getting a bend.
It is such a scary thing, especially like you talked about balancing, the work you're doing and your dream, because like you said, the work is priority at the moment because you have given someone your commitment, and it's like draining you during the week, that even when you come back home and you might want to build your own, but you're so tired and just want to sleep, and that leads you to sacrificing your weekends, like instead of having a time to relax and do things, but you now have to double down on your own setup, which is very understandable, but it's part of the journey, because it's these days where you're building those blocks that really push you to the next stage. It is, you said that at public health, those are the biggest users of BriteAPI, which is in itself very encouraging, that knowing that what you're building is actually helping people. So that makes it the stress becomes a bit less, because you know that you're actually building something which is tangible and people are actually using. Because it's a different situation when you're building something and you got like 10 users who are barely using it. So by not seeing it being used, and also you using it yourself, also allows you to see like problems. Also, like you're using it also as a consumer now, like, oh, okay, I think if I go back home and do it a bit like this, it makes it easier for the consumer to use. So you now have that feedback loop from using your own product, which is really amazing. I think some people might be wondering that, did BriteAPI lead you to getting this job, or it was just a coincidence that just happened?
Okay, fine. So it really was a coincidence, but the effect that led me to landing this job at HIPH is that track record that I had before HIPH. Like, I was working at the Community Pharmacist Association organization. So they just saw, like, what you're doing over there is really good. And we think we can use some of your skills. So that's how I get into join the HIPH. Then interestingly, they had a division that was just its inception, and I was squeezed in right into lead that development, where we, I mentioned about the cholera thing back then when I talked. So we are literally building a disease surveillance system that will literally help, for example, predict. It's a pipeline dream, but it's something that I'm seeing is very possible with how AI is becoming more and more used. So we are trying to build a predicting system that uses things like artificial intelligence and some deep data analysis to give us early warnings, like, hey, in Harare, you are most likely to have cholera outbreak in December because of A, B, C, D. And then we sit down and analyze if the reasons are making sense and are something that we can see currently, for example, in Harare. So it's quite an interesting, but you can see it involves a bit of medical background. And I so happen to be a person who was having that medical background by the time they were looking for a developer.
Thank you, Tino, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation with me. So before we wrap up the episode, and I just want you to just give advice on people who, like you, have been in their own lane of field. For example, for you was pharmacy, but can you give us some advice for those people who also want to branch out into tech, and how they can leverage their previous skills to take them to enter a new level?
So the easiest that I can now start to connect the dots, like looking back, like how was this possible for me is you really have to find a point of intersection of wherever you are and somewhere you want to go. There's always going to be a point of intersection where if it's either professional, like you are in finance, then you want to go in healthcare. You're going to see that there is point of intersection for finance and health. Then you can try to work your way around, or you can just try to spend hours around that point of intersection. You will really get to find someone who is crossing that intersection who can help you to jump to the other side.
Thank you once again, Tino. Thank you once again for sharing that knowledge. Like you said, and the day before you start anything, look for that intersection. It's always there. And having that allows you to be able to push through those difficult days. Because for myself, I'm a computer science student, and I know that this industry of tech is not as easy as most people make it seem out to be. There are going to be those days where things just don't make sense. And the vision you have, for example, for you building BriteLink and what you're learning is not going hand in hand. And you feel like you're not going anywhere. But when you know have that strong why, it gives you that dedication to push through those difficult days and understand that the things you cry about now are going to make you laugh about it in the near future.
I wanted to add on the lines that you were saying. Like, I remember this other article I read from the CEO of OpenAI, where he emphasized on how it will not make a lot of sense when you are building something that literally no one is talking about. And it tends to be hard, and there's always going to be an element of boring and no direction at all. But those are the things that the society really need the most. Instead of like, I want to build my WhatsApp. A lot of people be like, wow, you build a WhatsApp application. Wow, just like WhatsApp, and they'll hype you up, but it's you just riding on the wave that is just going to crash and end quickly. So yes, really, there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of volatility in tech industry, a lot. And as of now, we don't even know what is going to happen when we reach AGI in terms of artificial intelligence. What is going to happen? Are we going to keep our jobs? Whatever, we don't know. But there's always going to be that drive that will force you to keep on going. But that drive is something that you cannot be told like this is the drive. You have to find it on your own, like deep inside you. There's those interests, those wild thoughts. I think those are the ones that are worth just pursuing and spending a lot of hours trying to mess around, trying to find like, where do I fit in? What interests me? How can I do this? There's a lot of answers for those questions.
Thank you once again. As we close off, how can people reach out to you, especially as you're building this, you're still in your early days? Some people might want to reach out, maybe share their advices, or maybe do a small collaboration with you. Where can people find you?
So personally, I am really active on X, formerly Twitter. My handle is Tinotenda Joe 01. So I am really, really active. Like it's my first social media application that I check soon after I wake up and before I go to bed. Then on email, you can reach me via tinotendajoe01@gmail.com. Then on other platforms, again, it's literally the same username that I use, Tinotenda Joe 01. But I really highly recommend people for immediate feedback or reach out. If they use Twitter, they are going to find me right there.
Thank you for sharing those handles, and I know people will definitely reach out for I've seen the engagement you have been having on Twitter. Once again, as we close off, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to share a bit about your journey and what you're building. I hope it has inspired so many people to go out there and build something and just not worry about these primary problems and just say, if we have a primary problem, let's fix that primary problem before we go to the secondary problem.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. Also, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Africa's Blank Canvas Podcast, so you're always up to date with the latest news. Don't forget to share. That's the only way we grow.